The sun was sinking low on the horizon, casting long, dusty shadows across the marketplace. It wasn't the usual kind of place where you'd expect to find children. But there they were, 3 small figures standing together in worn-out clothes, their faces streaked with dirt and fear. They were not being treated like children. They were being treated like property. A man shouted out their price as if they were cattle. People passed by, glancing at them with either pity or indifference. For these children, there were no parents to fight for them, no last name to claim, no family to protect them. They had been sold off together, bound by nothing but their blood. And their silence. The oldest, a girl barely 12, clutched the hands of her younger siblings. She had become their shield, their comfort, their strength, though her own eyes carried the weight of hopelessness. The youngest boy whispered softly, "Sister, do we have a name?" She couldn't answer, because the truth was cruel. They didn't. They were nameless, forgotten, and alone. Just then, through the dust and the crowd, a man appeared. He wasn't dressed like the others, nor did he carry the cold expression of those who had come to buy. His hat was pulled low against the sun, his boots worn from travel, and his shoulders broad from years of hard work. He was a rancher, quiet, rugged and solitary. He stopped in his tracks when he saw the children. Something about the sight pierced through him. Perhaps it was the way the little girl held her siblings close, as if her tiny arms could protect them from a cruel world. Perhaps it was the emptiness in their eyes, the kind of emptiness he knew all too well. For this man had lived a life of loneliness too. His ranch was wide, his land rich with cattle, but his home was silent. He had no family waiting for him at night, no laughter echoing through the halls. As the auctioneer barked out another price, the rancher's jaw tightened. He had not come here to buy anything, but fate had brought him to this very moment, and in that instant, something stirred in his heart. He stepped forward. The girl flinched, pulling her brothers behind her. She had learned not to trust strange men, but the rancher's voice was steady, gentle, yet firm. "How much for the lot?" The crowd went silent for a moment, surprised at the question. The rancher didn't haggle. He didn't walk away. Within minutes, the papers were signed. And just like that, the children's fate was changed forever. As he led them away, the little boy tugged at his sleeve and whispered again, "Mister, what's our name?" The rancher looked down at him. His lips pressed together as he realized the truth. The children had nothing, not even the dignity of a name. And in that moment, he made a silent promise. They would never be nameless again. The road back to the ranch was quiet, but heavy with unspoken thoughts. The children walked a few paces behind the rancher, their small hands clutching the straps of a cloth sack that carried what little they owned. Every now and then, the youngest stumbled on the uneven dirt path, but before the rancher could turn around, the eldest sister would lift him gently and whisper, "Keep going. We have no choice." The rancher glanced back only once, his eyes meeting theirs for the briefest of moments. He could see their hesitation, their distrust, and who could blame them? The world had given them no reason to believe in kindness. As they reached the edge of his land, the vast ranch stretched before them, rolling pastures, scattered cattle grazing lazily, and the wooden fences that marked years of labor. For most, it would have seemed like a dream, but to the children it was overwhelming. The little boy tugged his sister's sleeve. "Do we live here now?" She looked at the man walking ahead, her voice tight with suspicion. "Don't get too excited. We don't know what he really wants from us." The rancher stopped at the barn doors and pushed them open. The smell of hay and leather filled the air. Horses shifted in their stalls, curious about the newcomers. With a calm voice, the rancher said, "This will be your home now. You'll work with me and you'll eat at my table. No one will harm you here." But the eldest girl folded her arms, her chin raised in defiance. "People always say that. And then they change." Her words cut deeper than any blade. The rancher didn't reply immediately. Instead, he removed his hat, ran a hand through his dark hair and crouched down to meet her eye level. His voice dropped, low and steady. "I can't change what the world has done to you, but I can give you a roof, food, and something you've never had before. Safety." The girl's lips trembled, but she held her ground. She wanted to believe him, but she had been let down too many times. At supper that evening, the silence was deafening. The rancher placed bowls of stew on the wooden table, but the children didn't touch the food. They stared at it as though it were a trap. Finally, the youngest boy whispered, "Is this really for us?" The rancher gave a single nod. "It's yours. Eat." The boy's small hands shook as he lifted the spoon, tasting something warm for the first time in days, perhaps weeks. Tears welled up in his eyes. Soon the others followed, hunger overpowering fear. The rancher watched quietly, his own bowl, untouched. For years he had eaten alone at this very table, the silence pressing down like a weight. But tonight, the clatter of spoons, the hesitant giggles, the sound of life, it filled the empty corners of his home. Still, doubt lingered. After the meal, the eldest girl confronted him again. "Why us? You don't know us. You don't even know our names." The rancher leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady. "You're right. I don't know your names. But that doesn't mean you don't deserve one. No child should go nameless. No child should feel unwanted." Her eyes narrowed, searching for deception. "So what do you want in return?" A pause. Then the rancher spoke the words that would change everything. "I don't want anything from you. What I want is to give you something. A chance, a family, a name." The room fell silent. The children exchanged confused glances, unable to process the weight of his promise. That night, as they lay on straw beds in the small room he had prepared, the eldest girl whispered to her siblings, "Do you think he means it? That he'll keep us?" The youngest boy hugged her tightly. "He gave us food. He didn't yell. Maybe he's different." She stared at the ceiling, her heart torn between fear and hope. The world had stolen so much from them: trust, innocence, even identity. And yet, something in the rancher's eyes had felt real, solid, like the earth beneath their feet. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself a fragile thought. What if this was the beginning of a new life? But little did she know their journey was only just beginning. The first morning at the ranch came quietly. The rooster's call broke the silence, and sunlight spilled through the cracks of the wooden shutters. The children stirred on their straw beds, uncertain whether this place was a dream or reality. The eldest girl sat up first, brushing the dust from her dress. She glanced at her siblings, still curled up, clinging to one another even in their sleep. For a moment she allowed herself a sigh of relief. They weren't out in the cold. They weren't hungry. But her relief didn't last long. She whispered to herself, "Nothing good stays, not for us." Outside, the steady rhythm of boots on dirt echoed. The rancher was already awake, carrying buckets of water, tending to the animals. His movements were deliberate, practiced, the kind of discipline only years of labor could teach. He paused at the doorway, his tall frame blocking the light. "Morning," he said simply. "Come on out. Time to see your new home." The youngest boy rubbed his eyes, blinking up at him. He wanted to run forward, but hesitation held him back. The middle child clung to his sister's hand, whispering nervously, "What if he changes his mind?" The eldest girl straightened her shoulders. "Then we'll be ready," she said firmly, though inside her chest her heart was pounding. When they stepped outside, the ranch unfolded before them. Wide fields stretched toward the horizon. Horses pawed the earth in their corrals. The barn stood tall, weathered by storms, yet unbroken. To the children, it felt like stepping into another world, so vast, so different from the crowded streets where they'd been sold. The rancher crouched near them, pointing toward the land. "This is where you'll grow. Not just food, not just work. This is where you'll grow strong. You'll learn to ride, to work with your hands, and to stand on your own feet." The youngest boy's eyes lit up. "Can I ride a horse?" he asked eagerly. A flicker of warmth touched the rancher's expression. "One day. But first, you'll learn to earn their trust." The eldest girl crossed her arms. "Why are you teaching us? We're not your children." The words stung, but the rancher didn't flinch. He looked her straight in the eyes. "Maybe not by blood, but you're under my roof now. That makes you my responsibility. And I don't walk away from responsibility." Her resolve wavered, though she quickly turned her face away. By midday, the children were given small tasks. The youngest carried feed to the chickens, dropping more on the ground than into the trough. The middle child tried sweeping the barn, coughing as dust rose into the air. And the eldest, determined not to appear weak, grabbed a pitchfork and tried to move hay bales far too heavy for her small frame. The rancher noticed her struggling. "You don't have to do it all at once," he said. "I can," she snapped back, sweat glistening on her brow. "I have to. No one else will take care of us." He didn't argue. Instead, he stepped beside her, showing her how to use leverage instead of sheer force. It's not about doing everything alone. It's about learning the right way and trusting others when the load is too heavy. For a moment, their eyes met. The lesson wasn't just about hay bales, and she knew it. That evening, the rancher gathered them around the dinner table again. He placed a loaf of bread in the center, breaking it with his own hands before passing it to the children. The act was simple, but to them, it carried weight. They weren't used to being served before someone else ate. The youngest boy, chewing, slowly asked timidly, "Mister, do we really get to stay here?" The rancher's voice was steady. "As long as you follow the rules of this house, honesty, hard work, and respect, you'll stay. This is your home now." The children glanced at one another. For the first time, hope flickered, fragile but real. But deep in her heart, the eldest girl still doubted. She whispered to herself that night as her siblings slept peacefully, "Homes don't last, people don't keep promises. We'll see how long before he changes." And yet, despite her fear, she couldn't deny the warmth that spread through the little room. For the first time in years they had eaten well. For the first time they had beds to rest on. For the first time they had something that almost felt like family. Still, the struggle was far from over. The rancher had taken them in, but earning their trust and teaching them to trust themselves would prove to be a battle of its own. And outside, in the silence of the night, the rancher sat alone by the fire. He stared into the flames, wrestling with his own doubts. Could he truly raise these children? Could he give them what life had stolen? He whispered into the dark as though speaking to someone long gone. "I don't know if I'm ready to be a father, but I'll try. Lord, I'll try." Days turned into weeks, and the children slowly adjusted to life on the ranch. The youngest began to laugh more, chasing chickens in the yard. The middle child, once timid, grew confident, carrying buckets of water and learning how to brush down the horses. Even the eldest girl, though still guarded, started to soften. She watched the rancher closely, waiting for the moment when his kindness would fade, but each day it didn't. Yet no matter how much progress was made, shadows lingered. One afternoon, while fixing a section of broken fence, the eldest girl confronted him again. Her hands were blistered, her brow damp with sweat, but her voice was sharp. "You keep teaching us, giving us food, treating us like we belong here. But why? What do you really want?" The rancher leaned on his hammer, meeting her gaze. His words were calm but heavy with meaning. "What I want is simple. I want you to have the chance to live the life you were never given." But she wasn't convinced. Years of betrayal had hardened her heart. She turned away, muttering, "No one gives something for nothing." Later that week, whispers began spreading in town. Folks at the general store, the saloon, and even the church pews began to talk. "Did you hear? He brought home children from the auction. Not his own? Strange thing for a man like him. Mark my words, nothing good comes of strangers." The gossip made its way back to the ranch. One morning, a neighbor rode up to the gate. His tone sharp. "You can't just take in nameless orphans. They'll bring trouble. You'd be better off sending them away." The eldest girl overheard every word. Her chest tightened. She had known it. People never truly wanted them. They were only ever a burden. That night she sat by the window staring into the darkness. Her younger siblings slept soundly, unaware of the whispers, the judgment. She clenched her fists, whispering, "We don't belong here. Sooner or later, he'll send us away like everyone else." The rancher, meanwhile, was fighting his own battle. Sitting alone by the fire, he replayed the townsfolk's warnings. He knew the weight of responsibility he had taken on. Raising children was no small task, especially children who carried such scars. Doubt pressed on him, but then he remembered the first night he saw them. 3 nameless souls standing in the dirt, waiting to be sold like livestock. He couldn't turn his back now. Still, conflict was inevitable. The breaking point came when the eldest child's fear pushed her too far. One morning, while the rancher was saddling his horse, he realized she was nowhere to be found. Panic rushed through him as he scoured the barn, the pastures, and the nearby creek. Finally, he found her on the edge of the property, clutching her siblings' few belongings in a small sack. "Where are you going?" His voice was low, steady, but strained with emotion. She stiffened, not turning around. "I won't wait for the day you change your mind. We've been tossed aside too many times. I won't let it happen again." The rancher took a step closer. "So you'd rather run than risk being loved? You'd rather drag your brother and sister back to the streets than give this home a chance?" Her lips trembled, but she snapped back. "At least on the streets, we knew where we stood. Here it feels too good, and things that feel good never last." The rancher's chest tightened. He had seen men break horses, cattle scatter in storms, land torn apart by drought, but nothing cut deeper than the broken faith of a child. He dropped his hat to the ground and knelt, so his eyes were level with hers. His voice cracked for the first time. "I can't promise life won't be hard. I can't promise people won't talk. But what I can promise, what I swear, is that I will not give up on you. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not ever." Tears welled in her eyes, though she tried to hide them. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind rustling through the grass. Finally, she loosened her grip on the sack and whispered, "Don't make promises you can't keep." The rancher placed a hand on his chest. "This one I intend to keep." But even as they walked back to the ranch, the storm of doubt had not fully lifted. Inside the girl's heart, trust was a seed buried deep, waiting for proof it could truly grow. And outside, in the watching eyes of the town, judgment still hung heavy, ready to strike. The real test of their bond was yet to come. The days rolled on, heavy with unspoken tension. The eldest girl still kept her distance, her mistrust lingering like a shadow. The younger children were warming to the rancher, laughing as they learned to care for the animals, but she remained guarded, watching, waiting, convinced that sooner or later everything would crumble. Then one evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky burned orange, the storm came. At first, it was only the sound of distant thunder rumbling softly across the plains. But soon the wind began to howl, whipping dust into the air, rattling the loose boards of the barn. Horses neighed nervously, stomping their hooves. The cattle in the pastures bellowed and pressed against the fences. The rancher's eyes sharpened. He knew the signs. This wasn't just a passing rain. It was a full-force prairie storm, the kind that could tear down barns and scatter herds into the wild. "Kids," he shouted, pushing through the house. "Get your boots on. We've got work to do now." The younger two froze in fear, but the eldest grabbed their hands and pulled them forward. Her voice trembled, but she forced it steady. "Do what he says, hurry!" Together they ran toward the barn. The sky split open with lightning, and the ground shook with thunder. Rain poured in sheets, soaking them to the bone. Inside the barn, chaos waited. The horses reared and kicked, ropes snapping against wooden posts. The youngest boy clung to his sister, eyes wide with terror. The rancher took charge instantly. "You, help me with the stalls. You, keep the little one safe." His voice cut through the storm like steel. For the first time, the eldest girl didn't argue. She obeyed. She grabbed a rope with trembling hands, struggling to calm one of the panicked horses. The rancher moved beside her, guiding her hands. "Steady now, don't pull against him, guide him, let him feel your strength." Her breath came in ragged gasps, but she did as he said. Slowly the horse calmed, snorting but no longer thrashing. Meanwhile, the middle child carried water buckets to keep the animal steady, his small arms shaking but determined. The youngest, too frightened to work, sang softly to a calf huddled in the corner. Somehow the sound eased the animal's fear. Then came the crash. A bolt of lightning split the sky, and a tree toppled onto the outer fence. The cattle broke, loose, surging into the storm. The rancher's heart pounded. "We can't let them scatter, we'll lose them all." He grabbed his saddle and threw it onto his horse in seconds. Turning to the eldest girl, he barked, "Stay here, keep the others safe." But she shook her head fiercely. "No, you can't do it alone." For a moment, their eyes locked. Then, seeing the fire in her gaze, he nodded. "Fine, ride with me." She scrambled onto a second horse, fear gnawing at her but resolve holding firm. Together they charged into the storm. Rain slashed across their faces, wind roared in their ears. The cattle bolted across the fields, shadows in the lightning flashes. The rancher shouted commands, his voice steady even against the chaos. The girl mimicked his actions, steering her horse with every ounce of strength she had. At one point, her horse faltered, nearly throwing her into the mud. Panic seized her, but the rancher rode up alongside, his hand gripping her reins. "Don't let go," he roared. "Trust yourself. Trust me." Something shifted in that moment. For the first time, she did trust him. She tightened her grip, steadied her horse, and pushed forward. Side by side, they herded the cattle back toward the safety of the barn. Hours seemed to pass before the last. The herd was secured behind the gates. Both riders sat drenched, their breaths heavy, their hearts pounding. The storm still raged overhead, but the battle was won. When they returned, the younger children rushed out, eyes wide with relief. The eldest girl slid off her horse, collapsing into their arms. For the first time, tears flowed freely down her face, not of fear, but of release. The rancher placed a steady hand on her shoulder. His voice was quiet, but firm. "You see, you're stronger than you know, and you don't have to face the storm alone." She looked up at him, her lip trembling. I thought you'd leave us when things got hard." His expression softened. "You don't run from family, not when it matters most." And in that moment, something inside her finally cracked. The wall she had built for so long began to crumble. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this man wasn't like the others. The storm outside would pass by morning. But the storm inside her heart had already begun to settle. The storm had passed, leaving the ranch quiet beneath a washed-out sky. The air smelled of wet earth and cedar, the land glistening beneath the morning sun. Inside the barn, the cattle shifted restlessly but safe. For the first time in weeks, a sense of peace blanketed the ranch. The eldest girl, exhausted but alive, with adrenaline, rose early. She found the rancher already in the fields, checking the fence line. She hesitated, then walked toward him. For once, her words weren't sharp. "How you didn't give up, even when it was hardest." He glanced at her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Storms come and go. What matters is who stands with you through them." Something in her heart softened at that. For so long, she had believed no one would ever stand beside them. But here he was, proving her wrong over and over again. That day marked the beginning of something new. Life on the ranch slowly became a rhythm, and the children were no longer just guests. They became part of the work, part of the land, part of him. The rancher began to teach them not just how to survive, but how to live. The middle boy was the first to show a spark. One morning, the rancher handed him a small lasso. "Here," he said, "try your hand at roping that post. Doesn't matter if you miss, just keep trying." The boy's first attempts were clumsy. The rope tangled, fell short, or slipped from his grip. His cheeks flushed with frustration. "I can't do it," he muttered, but the rancher crouched beside him. "You will, you just don't know it yet. Strength isn't in getting it right the first time, it's in not quitting until you do." The boy's eyes lit up, determination sparking where doubt had been. He tried again and again until finally the loop landed over the post. His grin stretched wide, pride glowing brighter than the morning sun. The youngest child, once too timid to speak, found his voice through music. He would hum and sing while helping with chores. His soft songs carried across the barn, calming the animals, and quietly calming the rancher too. One evening, after supper, the rancher surprised them by pulling out an old harmonica. The children's eyes widened as he pressed it to his lips and played a slow, steady tune. The youngest boy joined in with his voice, their melodies weaving together. The eldest girl, watching from the corner, felt her chest tighten. This was what home was supposed to feel like. The eldest girl herself changed the most. The walls she had built around her heart began to crack, piece by piece. She still guarded her siblings fiercely, but now she found herself learning, roping, mending fences, even cooking alongside the rancher. One afternoon, as they fixed a section of broken barn roof, the rancher asked softly, "What do you want for your future?" She froze at the question. For years, survival had been the only dream, but now, possibilities stirred. "I want my brother and sister to have a life better than mine, a life where they're safe, where they belong." The rancher nodded slowly. "And what about you?" Her throat tightened. She wanted to answer. She wanted to say she longed for safety, for belonging, for a place where she wasn't just someone's burden, but the words caught in her chest. She looked away. "I don't know if I deserve that." The rancher's voice grew firm. "You deserve more than you think, and I'll spend the rest of my days proving it to you." It was around this time that the town began to see a difference too. At church one Sunday, whispers shifted. Folks who once doubted the rancher now watched in surprise as the children sat beside him, heads bowed, their voices joining in the hymns. Some townsfolk nodded quietly. Others softened their stares. And though not everyone approved, the children no longer looked like nameless orphans. They looked like a family. One evening, as the sky glowed pink with sunset, the eldest girl tucked her siblings into bed. When she stepped outside, she found the rancher sitting on the porch staring across the fields. For the first time, she sat beside him without hesitation. The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. After a long moment, she whispered, "Maybe storms don't last forever." He turned to her, his gaze steady. "No, they don't. And when they pass, you see just how strong you really are." She let out a shaky breath, her eyes glistening. For the first time, she believed him. For the first time, hope felt real. The ranch was no longer just a place to survive. It was becoming their home. The seasons began to turn. The golden fields of summer faded into the crisp winds of autumn. Life on the ranch had become steady, almost ordinary. But for the children, it was anything but. For the first time in their lives, every morning began with warmth and purpose. No longer were they nameless shadows, drifting from one day to the next. They had chores, lessons, laughter, and someone who truly cared. Still, one truth remained unspoken. Though they lived under his roof, worked beside him in the fields, and ate at his table, they were not yet truly his. Not in the eyes of the law, not in the eyes of the town, and not yet in their own hearts. The eldest girl felt it most of all. Each night when she tucked her siblings into bed, she would watch them sleep peacefully and wonder, how long will this last? Will someone come and take it away? The rancher noticed the lingering fear in her eyes. And so, one chilly autumn evening, he made a decision. He hitched the wagon before sunrise and called the children outside. Their breaths puffed in white clouds as they climbed aboard, confused but curious. The road into town was quiet, the wheels crunching over frosted ground. When they arrived, the rancher guided them not to the general store, nor the church, but to the courthouse. The eldest girl stiffened instantly. Memories of auctions, of men, shouting prices, of being treated like property clawed at her chest. "Why are we here?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The rancher looked at her steadily. "To set things right." Inside, the courthouse felt overwhelming. High ceilings, echoing footsteps, men in suits with stern faces. The children clung together, fear rising. But the rancher's hand was firm and steady on their shoulders. He led them to the clerk's desk and spoke words they didn't fully understand at first. Petitions, papers, signatures. Then the judge entered, his robes swaying as he took his seat. He peered down at the rancher and the children, his voice deep. "You've come to make them your own?" The rancher nodded, his jaw set. "Yes, sir. They've been through enough. They deserve more than a roof and bread on the table. They deserve a family. My family." The judge studied him for a long moment, then turned his gaze to the eldest girl. "And you, child? Do you accept this man as your guardian? Do you trust him to care for you?" Her breath caught in her throat. Every instinct screamed to be cautious, to protect herself. But then she remembered the storm, the way he had ridden beside her when the winds threatened to throw her down. She remembered the nights by the fire, the lessons in the fields, the quiet promise that she wouldn't have to face life alone. Her eyes filled with tears. Slowly she nodded. "Yes, sir, I trust him." The judge's pen scratched across the paper. With a final stroke, it was done. When they stepped outside, the morning sun had broken through the clouds, bathing the street in light. The rancher knelt before them, his weathered face soft with emotion. "You were brought into this world without a name. But that ends today. From this day forward, you carry mine. You are not just children I took in. You are my family, my sons, my daughter." The youngest boy threw his arms around the rancher's neck, tears streaming down his face. The middle child followed, gripping him tightly, and at last, the eldest girl, who had fought so hard to guard her heart, let it break wide open. She sank into his embrace, sobbing into his shoulder. For the first time in their lives, they weren't just surviving. They belonged. Word spread quickly through town. Some still whispered, some still questioned, but others began to smile when they saw the little family riding in together on Sundays. Folks tipped their hats, offering quiet respect. The children walked taller now. They had chores, they had lessons, but more than anything, they had a last name. A name that gave them a place in the world, a name no one could take away. The rancher, once a solitary man, no longer sat alone at his table. Laughter filled the rooms of his house. Small hands tugged at his sleeves, and at night, he slept knowing he had given more than just shelter. He had given love, identity, and a new beginning, and the eldest girl, once silent, mistrusting, hardened by loss, now carried hope in her heart. She no longer wondered if the rancher would leave them. She knew. Families didn't walk away. As the sun dipped below the horizon that evening, the four of them stood on the porch side by side, watching the land stretch out before them. It was no longer just his ranch. It was their home, their future, their new life together.